right, where did they go? There they are. Hey guys, it's Zach from Burning the Redshirt. We have some technical difficulties. I don't see Andrew or Chris on the stream, so that's a problem.
Could be worse.
There we go. There they are. Anyway, start back over. I'm Zach from Burning Redshirt here with Chris K and Andrew Katz. The Holy Trinity has finally reunited. And I don't even want to get into really how you guys are doing. Andrew, we're glad you're back with us. At what point of the trip to Athens did you black out?
Dude, so I've learned from doing this as annually as we can. I've learned how to pace myself to some degree. Stillwater, when we went to Bedlam, was probably the closest I've come to just being in a total blackout on game day. Like all the games I think we've gone to, with the exception of maybe one or two, and closing in on 10 at this point, I would say for trips. All the games, with the exception of one or two, have been 3:30 games, and the idea, right, is you're trying to get to the tailgate as early as you can, factoring in different variables. You're talking what that nets out to is probably about like a 9 a.m., 9 to 10 when you start getting after it type deal.
So 11 o'clock.
Stillwater, yes.
That's the answer.
What was that?
So 11 o'clock is the answer.
Stillwater was the closest, though, largely because we all decided to slug a bunch of vodka right before we went into the game. But the Bedlam game I went to, there was like 50 points scored in the first quarter. It was just Mason Rudolph and Baker going back and forth, just slinging thing. And I remember very little of it, and kind of just came out of it and back into it in the middle of the second quarter. At Athens, I mean, pacing myself is not really the right word, because we were just murdering Trulies all morning. But I was feeling pretty good by the time the game kicked off. But I mean, really, the 5 hours, it sounds like a lot, right? You get there 9 or 10, the game kicks off at 3:30, but it's everything's so jammed together, especially when you're fortunate enough, like we were, to have like game day on campus, right? You got to go and experience game day for a little bit. We used a professional tailgating company and they, like, as much as they try and say like, okay, breakfast is going to be here at this time, lunch is going to be here at this time, everything's going to be set up for you by when you get there, like at 9 or 10. Nothing really shakes down as well as it should, because they're doing this for like 60, 70 different tailgates in like a square area, and like things invariably go wrong. So you can try and map out how things are going to go. Things don't really, like, it's not as linear and perfect as you would like it to be. So everything kind of just gets jammed together. And, but yeah, no real blacking out occurred at this.
I'm assuming it was a good time, though.
Of our annual trip, but it was good.
Did you go in the game? Did you get tickets?
So we did, of course. We did not go the StubHub route. Instead, went the route of trying to buy sketchy tickets in person, which nets out exactly how you expected it to.
That's like, about the only way I would expect it. Yeah.
A lot of fake tickets. All of us got into the game. I didn't end up really getting a seat because my tickets were, of course, other people had them as well. So I just kind of roamed the upper concourse and and went from like one side to the other relative to the game flow. But it was still amazing to experience. One of the biggest takeaways, I think, was that when we do, like, one of my buddies described it as the whole operation is what you would expect from like a big operation being run by a university, in the sense that, like, you probably could have just walked in if you tried hard enough. No one's gonna chase you because they're just playing a numbers game. Like, there's 90,000 people going to the game. What are they gonna do? Run after you? So next time, maybe we just won't buy tickets and we'll just try and we'll just Area 51 that shit. They can't stop all of us, kind of deal.
That's awesome. So the
I didn't peg you for a Truly guy, by the way.
Dude, so I've been Team White Claw for the longest time, and largely because the same group of friends was so on the White Claw bandwagon a couple of years ago when we did our last trip. But they were like, no, you can't do that anymore. It's not clean enough. Like, the vodka iterations are much better. They fill you up less. There's the hangover is not as bad. I was like, I'll try whatever. Like, let's just get a lot of alcohol. And so our trip was initially supposed to be 9 people. So we did everything for 9 people, and then two of my friends had kids and family members getting sick, so they bailed. And then turns out one of us just wanted to do edibles the whole time, so he's not drinking. And then another one of us was not in a good place to drink either. So we bought enough alcohol for 9 people, and there's only 5 of us. And then of course we forgot the vodka and tequila at the place we were staying. So all we had was Truly's, which was fine. But yeah, I think I'm a convert from White Claw to Truly. Like, it was good. It lived up to the hype. It was clean. It went down just a smooth taste. Like, sometimes I am a snob when it comes to that kind of stuff. If it doesn't taste good, I'm not gonna I'm here for the taste as much as I am anything. And it was good. I enjoyed the taste of Truly's. I can go back to that.
All right. Well, I'm gonna build Truly here for that little ad we just ran for him. So, anyway, well, let's move on past the Georgia game. I know it was a good game, great game for Andrew. But I guess we won't pass that game. Did it go as you expected, or was it a shock to you that Tennessee was stifled the way they were?
If you had asked me what I thought would happen, I probably would have said this, but I don't know if I would have actually believed it. I mean, it was great the only thing I would say that was a letdown is the confluence of events between the weather and just the total game control. Didn't lend itself to Stetson throwing for 405. Instead, they just kind of said whatever in the second half and let him sit on his 250 and 3 or whatever it was, which is a little annoying. But I felt pretty confident going in overall, so I can't say I'm surprised. The vibes of the crowd in the post game and just overall the atmosphere definitely was comparable, I would say, to when we did Alabama and for my bachelor party, and number 5 Alabama took down number 1 Mississippi State at Bryant-Denny, and the fans were just like, we expected it. Right. They just kind of walked off, no field storming, none of that jazz, and it was kind of the same deal here, I would say.
Chris, what do you think?
I think in my heart of hearts, I knew Georgia was just going to control the game and win convincingly, but I just really wanted Tennessee to win, so I couldn't say it out loud.
So let me ask you this. Does it make you think differently of Oregon? With
much changes.
Well, no. I mean, I know Oregon's a better team, right?
I'm saying that's such a.
I mean, it was first game with a brand new quarterback and a brand new coach.
Yeah,
and it was a home game basically.
Yeah, I think there is some credence to it. I'm wondering if you think that. Like, you know what? They shut Oregon down, dominated them, and they just dominated the number 1 team, Tennessee, pretty much the same way. Maybe they didn't score as many points, but they shut them down. So what is that?
I think a lot of things here, this is one of those situations where, like, you play and what are they ranked, and then you check it out at the end of the season.
Well, no,
right?
I know.
I think we'll find out at the end of the – like, I think we'll discover at the end of the season that Tennessee's a top 15 team. They're not a number 1. They were number 1 because they had the best resume, but that doesn't make them the best team, right? And then Oregon, I think, I mean, if they're undefeated, they 100% deserve to go in the playoff. If they're 12-1, they have a strong case, right? Or they're not going to be undefeated. They're 12-1, they have a strong case if they win out, right?
Right.
But I have a feeling they lose one of them, and I have a feeling if they did make the playoff, they'd get smacked. They have to be a 3 seed too, right? Because no one wants to see Georgia, Oregon again.
No one wants to see Georgia, Tennessee again either.
Right. Like, no. I don't like no one wants to see that. Like, you either want them in the playoff or you don't. Like, I would rather, I said this on Twitter, I think it was Jared. He commented back on me, but I said, like, I would much rather see a team play again that played in week 1 than a team that played in week 10. Right. Like, you're more of who you are in week 10 than you are in week 1. And that's obviously my opinion, but I just feel like if you're going to try to avoid rematches, then you can't put Oregon in at 4, and you can't put Tennessee in at 4 if Georgia's number 1. So, I don't know. I'm not trying to get in a playoff discussion.
The Tennessee thing is fine. I mean, I think rematches are unavoidable. For one,
you're right. They are.
They're going to happen at some point,
especially with a 12-team playoff coming.
Yeah, but those spots don't feel as like precious, right? When there's 4, it's like, man, you really have to get this right. Like, and when there's 12, it's going to be like, well, Like, are we really going to get upset if
the whole
they
point
get
is
a rematch, but they were the 8 seed?
But the problem is when you have 4 spots, it's you rank the teams. Well, we really think they're the 4th best team, but we don't want them to play the 1 teams again, so we're going to put them at 3.
Well, you know how we feel about this. Andrew and I have discussed this.
I was just going to say, we
they're
both
going to
agree
do
on the
whatever
same
they
number of
want.
teams, what it should be, right?
They're going to do whatever they want
right
to make people talk about it and stir people up.
Right.
And then when it comes down to it, they're going to make a business decision.
You're right. I don't disagree with that. I'm just telling you my thought process. Okay, we won't talk about MACtion this week because Andrew is recording the games tonight. He doesn't want to talk about them, so we won't talk about those games. But we'll talk about last night. Andrew and I are playing in the playoffs in Dynasty, and it was kind of like Andrew. Actually, I'll quote him: "It's a chess match when you have MACtion players." I had Daquan Finn. It was kind of almost game time decision whether he was going to play or not. And I don't remember who are you considered playing. I don't know if you did or not. I don't know what you ended up actually doing.
It was I screwed it up. I knew I was playing Wiggles on Ohio. Whoops, he put up like 2 points, and then I was on the fence about Jawan Newton, and I did not play him and should have because he got all the targets, and the line was more than acceptable in half PPR. I think he put up a shade under 20, which I would have taken. So not the best start for me. Fortunately, we saw enough players in this league where I'm not even close to dead.
Well, if you get a Mordecai performance again, I'm fucked either way, so it doesn't really matter. But we played last week. Speaking of rematches, we played last week.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, we played in the last.
The problem with the two opponent thing is I don't even look at both most of the time, and I might not even look at either. I'm more or less just kind of focusing on my roster.
How many you scored? How much you got? Yeah. Was there anything you guys wanted to talk about with MACtion? I know Chris has been doing the little previews, the DFS previews. I don't know if you guys have seen them.
Those are cool.
We
posted
posted
it's
them.
getting a lot of love.
Yeah, it's getting more love than the podcast.
Well, thank you. Let me ask about MACtion. Is it unreasonable to want any sort of idea behind injury status before the game? I'm not talking I need full written out, but like this is bad for MACtion, right? Like all these random injuries and all of a sudden, like if you think about who their audience is, it's gamblers and fantasy sports players, right?
Yeah.
This doesn't help. This craziness doesn't help, right? Like people are just not going to gamble and not play fantasy sports on it now, right?
Yeah, tonight, what you informed me in terms of the last 5 minutes and the first 5 minutes, right? Tonight is too much overall. I think that it balances out in a way that I really enjoy between. What I don't want personally is standard injury reports. I think that's the worst thing for what I want to do in terms of fantasy and gambling. I think that once you get standard injury reporting, basically looking at something that's akin to the NFL and a lot of quote unquote edges lost. I think that there is an in between, a happy medium between standard injury reporting and what is going on tonight with MACtion. And I think that we find that happy medium to my satisfaction more often than not. But yeah, tonight is a wasteland.
Yeah, I just have a problem, and I agree with that. Nothing has to be super standardized, but it would just be nice if someone didn't even travel to the game.
Right.
That somebody would say, like, and maybe it's the beat writers.
It is 4.5 of them partially that are Did you like the Kent State beat writer quit this week? Did you see that?
I did not. He's tired of it too.
Yeah, he's
been.
You
think the coaches are like, don't say shit about this guy not traveling?
There might be some of that. So that article that we saw from one of those injury reporting or lack thereof from a couple weeks ago with Rising. It was so insightful in this. It just talked to how and why the broadcasting crew does have privilege and more information, and it makes total sense. Can you hear me or no?
Yeah. I hear you.
I assume you can't. Fuck.
Yeah,
We can hear you. Just do your
oh,
and he's
there
gone.
he went.
I'll kind of pick up on it. So what Andrew was discussing was the Fox article about how
Hold on.
Utah, that whole Rising wasn't playing, and Utah tricked them essentially, where the commentators, the announcers had no idea. So they had done all this prep for Rising. They even made mention of Rising, and you see him run on the field, the quarterback run on the field, and it's not Rising. It was very, very weird. But like, I don't care if an announcer has insider info. Like, if you want to tell them, hey, this is what's going down, don't say anything. Like,
well, that one Oklahoma beat writer, I assume you follow him. I don't know if it's Gabe Eckert or someone else, where he sends out the depth chart with circling who's he sees in warmups every week. It's amazing. Obviously that's not going to be a perfect inclination for who's going to play, but that, can you imagine if we got something like that from MACtion?
Yeah,
I mean, we'll never get that from MACtion.
No, obviously.
Right.
I tweeted I DM'd a beat writer once and asked him if a player was good, and he was kind. He responded back saying, "Yeah, there's no reason for him to think that he's out. It's just a little bit of like a split carry situation." Dude didn't play the next game.
Of course.
Due to injury.
Yeah,
I'm like,
the Kent State beat writer who just quit, he wrote in his write-up leading up to last week that he didn't think Schley was going to play, and then obviously he played. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about, I guess, some of the games last week real quick. Just kind of recap a few of them. We already talked about Georgia, Tennessee. Let me see here. Was there any?
You don't want to do the Stetson Heisman conversation for the next 20 minutes?
I think you can do that on
there's
your
no
own.
such thing as Kirby's killed it.
I don't know, man. The odds, the betting markets say otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, right? Because like Hooker, it'd be hard for Hooker to win the Heisman.
Yeah.
Stroud, obviously, last week. It really feels like it's now pivoted to Corum and Drake May and Caleb Williams, and then the Bo Nix. They all feel like kind of meh options.
He had to throw Bo in there. We know.
I mean, his season's been incredible. So I don't think he's going to win the Heisman. I mean, you'd have to have a lot of stuff happen for that to actually happen. But he's definitely put himself in the top 5 category.
Yeah. So like a lot of stuff, like Alabama losing to LSU. Now, I didn't really know much about LSU. I didn't really watch LSU a whole lot. I remember watching them against Florida State, thinking, man, both of these teams just suck. Neither one of these teams should win. And of course, Florida State, didn't they win on a blocked extra point or something like that? Like it was something. Anyway, like I thought, LSU's just, they're 10th, they're just kind of by default. They don't know who else to put there. They're not really that good, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm watching this game. I'm thinking like, okay, maybe Alabama's just not any good. Because I like refuse to believe LSU's any good. For some reason in my head, I didn't think LSU was any good. But Jaden Daniels has actually put up a really good season. A lot better than we thought after about week 1 or week 2. So what do you guys think about him? Or LSU in general?
I mean, there's no way they beat Georgia. Like, that offense is way too one-dimensional. It's just Jaden Daniels running with his, like a chicken with his head cut off, right? Like,
yeah,
he's very good at it. He's a strong runner. He's not afraid to take a hit. But like,
the defense showed up too,
though.
I mean, they showed up to play Alabama. I mean, it was...
Well, the OC is this old Cincinnati OC, and it's basically just what they were doing with Ritter. It's like, all right, go make a play, hit a receiver, throw it to a tall receiver, use your legs, and let's do it.
Yeah.
So Andrew, do you think that is a competitive game in the SEC championship? Yeah, right.
I don't think LSU makes it to the SEC championship. They're going to lose after Thanksgiving to A&M, definitely, and they might trip up before then too.
They have to lose twice, though, right?
Yeah, they get Arkansas. Dude, Hornsby might start. Did you see this?
Did not.
Oh,
yeah. So they could lose to Hornsby,
don't
and
they have
then
like
they
Arkansas,
get UAB.
Southern, or UAB? Yeah, UAB.
Yeah.
But they have to lose 2
feisty
SEC
UAB
games.
squad. And that, you're right. Yeah, I'm giving them a definitive L to Wiegman and Jimbo. And then I guess you're right. I mean, it's a little tough for them not to make it at this point, but
just because they have to lose twice,
right?
Because they have the tiebreaker over, obviously Alabama, and then I guess they beat Ole Miss.
But if Alabama beats Ole Miss,
they have then Ole Miss is done.
But how does it work with a 3-way tie? If Alabama beats Ole Miss, and then they all have one loss, how does that?
Yeah, but Ole Miss lost to. Didn't Ole Miss lose to LSU? Right?
It's probably some funky division record thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying though. That's what I'm saying. If Alabama beats Ole Miss, gives them a second loss, LSU were to lose one of these last 2 games, and they all have 2 losses in the SEC. Who do they take? It's got to be some, like Andrew said, some wonky little rule, highest ranked team gets to go. But
yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
But Georgia won't have a problem with that,
right?
With LSU.
All right, so the other top, I guess, 10 games. Ohio State kind of struggled. Northwestern, I watched a little bit of that game. Wind was kind of absurd in that game. I think it was 40-mile-an-hour winds at points in that game. Clemson looked awful, like we've said they would.
Let me ask?
Yeah.
I asked Andrew in G-Chat days ago and didn't get a response. I presumably just had an IV in him and he was just recovering still. But would you consider Louisville's defense against Clemson for?
Dude, I have them in my home league, and I was pretty bought into using them. First of all, just from a upside perspective, you could see DJU taking sacks and throwing picks all day.
All day.
Right? So I could see it playing out nicely. But waivers ran today, and I got Pitt against UVA, which is kind of not dissimilar. UVA is down half their receivers, right? I could see sacks and picks from Armstrong there as well, with probably a little higher floor. So I feel like I end up using Pitt over Louisville, but part of me really wants to use Louisville, even though it's probably not the smartest idea.
I don't know, man. I'm so torn by it. For me, it's I'm using Louisville. I'm using Houston against Temple, which feels sketchy considering what just happened with Houston.
Right.
But their Temple's so bad.
Yeah, but Warner, even though he throws a decent amount, he doesn't throw picks. It's annoying. He doesn't take sacks.
Right.
I don't know. Temple just put 54 up on South Florida.
Yeah.
Yet that random guy Edward Sadie ran for
yeah, he had 300 some odd yards.
Yeah, and 3 touchdowns. Yeah.
So, all right, I guess Michigan, they kind of struggled early with Rutgers. They were actually down at the half. I almost said something in the G chat, but I was like, I'll wait and see if Rutgers gets to the fourth quarter.
You knew it was coming.
Yeah.
They've done it. I saw a post about it. It was Michigan has played kind of tight in the first half, and then they've outscored people in the second half. Basically, they're 21-0, 35-0, 28-3. Everything is huge. And I think someone said, I was looking at different, of course, highlights, clips, and things like that. And I think people, the offensive line just wears people down, and then the running game just explodes.
Yeah. Another one, I guess, UCLA beat Arizona State. Talk about Heisman candidates. I've mentioned him before. DTR is playing well. If they can win out, it'll be quite interesting how his stats will stack
west
up.
of the Mississippi, though.
You're right. No, there is a bias, but I'm just saying statistically, because that would assume they'd have to go through. They'd have to rematch Oregon, right? Or no, the Pac-12 does the top 2, don't they? They don't do.
No, they don't anymore.
They don't do a North.
You're right. It's top 2 overall.
They don't do North-South anymore, so I don't know. They might get them again.
All 4 of those teams are have you seen this? So next week, Oregon plays Utah, UCLA plays USC, and people of course the the media people are crying about the reality that one game is kicking at 8:00 Eastern, the other's kicking at 10:30, and it's like that's great. We love that.
Right.
You don't, but
it was that one guy, that one reporter on Twitter.
Yeah.
What is McCullough, right?
I forget. I remember seeing it.
Brady McCullough or something like that. One of the California beat reporters.
Oh, was he? I saw someone else say it. I mean,
yeah.
It's like, yeah.
He was like, all 4 teams deserve better.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Speaking of Pac-12, I'm just interjecting the whole time here, Zach. Don't worry.
No, you're good.
Pac-12, did you see the report Dan Patrick made about the Pac-12?
I saw San Diego
State was going to be joining. Like, that felt like one of those rumors that it's just like, why would you even say that? Like, that's no way that's going to happen.
Well,
why wouldn't it happen?
I also saw people calling back to all the proclamations he made during COVID about what's going to happen with college football, and he was wrong about every single one. So maybe we shouldn't take him seriously when it comes to the sport.
No, I used to listen to him a ton. I think he's like pretty entertaining, but
oh really?
His college football stuff is so bad. He's like he needs to fire his sources because they're awful.
But I don't see why adding San Diego State would be a bad thing for them. They're losing everyone else. They got to put somebody in there if they're going to keep the conference afloat, and that's the biggest market available. So makes sense, but I don't know that it does much for them.
If you add San Diego State, it's like adding Rutgers, right? You're adding a big market, but like the team is just not. It's not. I mean, I'm not like Pac-12's not amazing, but like San Diego State's been pretty since the pump for years.
I mean, but what options do they have? Where are you going to go? I mean, there's not many options to get. Like as far as big markets, that's the only one that's really available. Unless you're going to try to go and get BYU, and that's not even a big market.
Well, BYU's got a great fan base, right?
Whatever.
Can I pivot this conversation?
You can.
Yeah.
What so we're all. I'm first of all, I'm so upset that I'm in 7 in-season managed leagues and I've only made the playoffs in 4 of them. Like a couple of weeks ago, that felt somewhat unfathomable, and 2 of my teams just totally torpedoed for no good reason other than I mismanaged them / didn't give them the attention they deserved. So 4 out of 7 is not really acceptable, but now let's see what we can do with those 4. But when you think about setting your lineups, managing your roster for playoffs relative to regular season, do you do anything differently, or do you just kind of, do you think about things differently when it comes to what you're doing to prep for a playoff week relative to a regular season week?
I'll answer this one first. I always come back to, all right, I drafted these guys to win me a title. Don't overthink it. Play them. And now if you've got like fringe guys, I think it really just comes down to who you think is the safest option to get you points. At least that's how it is for me. If I feel like he's probably a 15-point guy, but I know he's going to give me 15 points, I'm going to take him. Especially if my other options are kind of boom or bust. Like I have a few of those guys, like my guy Sturdivant from Cal. He could have a great week. Yeah, he could have a great week, and then the next week have 2 catches for 19 yards. And it's so hard to play him when it counts because kind of have to have everything go right. But I could have another guy on my bench or on my team that gets me, 8 catches, 100 yards, and touchdown, and I'm happy with that. I can't argue with that, but Chris might think differently. He might go a little more.
I've made it in 2 out of 5, and
unacceptable.
It's just the 2 most important leagues at least, but most of my teams are pretty top heavy, so I don't really have a ton of like decisions to make, but I definitely want more consistency out of it. But I've also found myself just maneuvering MACtion. Like some of my best players were like Devontae Walker and Lou Nichols, who's been weird all season. So like I've found myself sitting here thinking like, do I just put Nichols on the bench, and then if he's confirmed playing, I put him in? So I'm more looking at like backup plans in that regard. And then like Addison on a Friday, I have Taj Washington, which is nice, but it just becomes a situation where I have to be so on top of it, which is really
Dude,
frustrating.
I have in my home league, I have Addison, Mario, and Taj. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to end up just playing Taj.
Yeah. Oh, I think we lost Andrew again.
I was like in no shape to actually be using my brain. Saturday night, I was still able to monitor stuff, and I saw that Mario and both got ruled out going in like pretty early on for last week's game. I have no idea if that's going to happen. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Shit sucks.
He's gone again.
This is great.
I've run into that with Taj. That, like I had just said. So it is interesting just to have to fight that battle. I think you're probably smart, Andrew, in that you need to just play Taj. But the problem is, it's kind of like with tonight with Devontae Walker. I have Poke on the bench, and I was like, well, I can't play Poke if both those guys are playing. And so I ended up just not playing any of them. You know, I would rather just play it safe and not take the 0. Like I'm playing Kyle Francis, and he's playing Whaley, but he had no real idea that Whaley was, you know, and he played him in a flex spot. So you definitely have to pay attention to the days of the week that they start, because he just killed a flex spot. You know, now he has one less option for some other bullshit to happen to his running backs.
I've done a lot better on strategically lining up my flex spots. Sometimes I forget and just throw them in there and like whatever happens. But I've been trying to leave my later picks for the flex if I can, because it gives me a little bit more flexibility in my lineup. But especially with MACtion though, like you can't put him in your flex if he's going to play on Tuesday. What is happening? I got music in my headphones, guys, but I don't know where it's from.
Yeah,
it sounds cool.
I think that's fair.
You guys hear this?
The introduction. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I think
where did that come from?
Stop touring ESPN and getting.
Is that me? Oh, it is me.
Stuff on in the background. Yeah,
oh, wow.
It's not.
That
us.
was
It's
awesome.
Never us.
That was a cool sound. Well, anyway, you guys will hear it on the pod. But yeah, go on.
I was gonna go down a tangent that no one wants to hear, but my take is the opposite of you guys. I will lean into the idea of, okay, that these are my best players. I'll roll with them during the regular season, but more I think about when it gets to postseason time. I'm not relying on any stupid narratives like start your studs or these guys are got here. If I lose, it's going to be because I made my own bad decisions and I used my own brain and my own logical arguments to arrive at the conclusions for who I thought it best to start. Obviously, they're flawed a lot of the time because they're all just largely based on disinformation, conspiracies, and what the garbage that we have to deal with in college football. But I don't know. That's how it'll allow me to sleep a little better at night than just leading into some narrative. So, but regular season, as long as I don't need to win, I'm fine kind of just setting my lineup and reacting relative to news that we get without trying to overthink things too much.
That's fair. Like I think I kind of do that. I know I said I start my guys that got me there, but there's a lot of times where I'm like on the fence between two guys, like a guy that I've kind of rode with all year, but he hasn't really performed.
And this is how you arrive at starting Wiggles and his 2 points and benching Juwan Newton and his 22. So,
right. But Wiggles was a good play though.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't like
I would have done the same
option.
thing. I would have done the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Like last week, I had my quarterbacks were Will Levis and Travis Marsh from South Florida, who I picked up.
What made you start that guy?
Well, if you saw my other options, you would have done the same. I had DJU against Notre Dame. N'Kosi Perry, I think, was on a bye. DeQuan Finn was a no-go. AJ Swan was not happening. Like it was one of those. I picked him up because he was starting at South Florida. He's got some eligibility. I said, yeah, I can ride with this guy for another year. See what happens, right? And it turns out I'm like, well, guess I got to start him because I didn't have any other choice. So that's how I got to that. But it turned out okay. I mean, it wouldn't have mattered because I got smoked either way in both of my matchups. But he actually didn't play terribly. I think he got me like 20 points, 20. So, but yeah, like what you're saying though is like you want to be smart about your decisions. Don't just blindly pick the guys because on name on paper that they're better.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like if a guy hasn't failed me all year long, it's hard for me to sit him down. Like Jaden Ott, I gotta play Ott right every time.
Yeah.
Even against USC, I thought he's gonna get the ball a lot, and turned out it worked out good. But
USC's defense is just awful, so that's a good play.
But
I'm
Cal
playing
is
them against
great.
Zach this week.
What?
Against Colorado? They're gonna put up 50 points on Colorado against you.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, I know, but I gotta hope that my Tennessee defense does something. So.
Yeah.
Guys, I sent this to you in the chat earlier. I just wanted to put this out there. You guys follow that CFB campus tour, that guy that goes around all the games, and apparently he has no life other than to do that. But he put a glass bowl fact that I thought was really funny. I don't know if it's true or not, but I don't know why I wouldn't think it's true. But I'm going to read it. Trajectory of the rocket outside the stadium is pointed 25 miles south towards Bowling Green State University. If the rocket were to be lit, it would blast off and land directly on the 50-yard line of the Falcons' Doit Perry football stadium.
I mean, they got to be big rivals to do that, right?
Yeah, you would think.
That's true.
It's like an act of war, is it not? Like if a country lines up a missile like directed at the Pentagon, like don't you think that we're taking that pretty seriously?
Is it a live rocket?
I don't know. Probably
could
not.
It feasibly?
See, it's shit like this. Even with all the money that we light on fire in the MAC, it's still why shit like this is why it's like one of the best conferences and why I'll always come back.
Yeah, and they have like the weird rivalry trophies and stuff. But yeah,
so weird. The wagon. Are they the wagon wheel, or is that's Mountain West, right? Or no? That I think the wagon wheel is Kent State, Akron. I could be making that up though.
I'll tell you in a second.
Did you guys see who's going to be playing on weekdays in October next year?
Conference USA, right, dude? That fucking conference. Like, I am convinced that conference will continue to only exist, even more so than most of our conferences now, like to line a very few select people's pockets. Like there's no reason for these teams to exist in conglomeration together. There's no greater benefit that's coming from this. There's no regional ties or anything. It's literally they just were like, hey, do you want to join my club? And some teams raised their hands. They were like, yeah, I'm in. Oh, can you be D1 first, please? And then the teams did they did it so they could be D1, and now they're Conference USA. I wonder if they'll have an actual in-person media day now. I highly doubt it. I don't think Conference USA is quite veering back in that direction. But yeah, the specs on their TV deal are so funny. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
What did you? I only know that they're going to be doing weekdays in October. What else is there to it that we know right now?
Each school is getting $750,000 a year for the TV deal.
So does that mean that Louisiana Tech doesn't have to get their ass kicked by Alabama next year? Or
well, I guess it means that like Caleb Williams and Jordan Addison are like making more than these schools with their TV.
I was about to say what a boatload of cash.
And there is the argument, right, that it's like, oh, it's more about the exposure and like long-term type stuff or whatever. It's like, fine, but you're like, I don't know. It feels gross. It just like this conference, I feel like conferences can dissolve. We don't need just because it existed historically. Similar, like the Big 12 could have dissolved, I think, if all those G5 schools didn't come to bail them out. I think that would have been the best thing. And then the AAC could have risen to be a power. They could have commanded that power, and we all would have been a lot happier. But no. I don't know. I think that the natural order of things, though, is not necessarily the Conference USA existing. I don't think that necessarily needs to be the case. Everyone's trying a little too hard there. And I mean, to be determined how it plays out. And obviously I'm here for the midweek October void being filled, right? I'm down to watch. I'm down to gamble. I'm down to play fantasy sports. I'm down to have some football going on and Tuesday and Wednesdays in October, but it's a bit contrived.
Who do you think is the most valuable team in the Conference USA? Like, if there's
I don't
one
even think I
team
can
that's
name them all.
appealing, I had to. I'm literally staring at a list, or else I could tell you. Like,
I guess WKU, right? They're still there.
that team's not appealing. I mean,
UTSA?
in terms of,
Are they still? No, are they still CUSA?
UTSA?
currently, yeah. What about UAB? Do you think UAB is like a better program / more appealing?
Appealing in what way?
I don't know. For like maybe I guess maybe the question is better suited as which one leaves next.
Yeah, UAB and UTSA, they're gone.
Where'd they go? Sunbelt?
AAC, Sunbelt,
Florida
Power
Atlantic,
Conference,
Florida, Charlotte.
Yeah, it's a ragtag bunch.
Yeah.
Are you sure CUSA and are they definitely like?
I mean, that's what I'm looking at ESPN, and this is what the current list of them is: Charlotte, FAU, FIU, Louisiana Tech.
Some of these schools are gone, aren't they? I think Charlotte went to the AAC.
Yeah, because Jacksonville State, Liberty, New Mexico State, and Sam Houston join next year.
Jacksonville State.
So yeah, they are
incredible.
Gone. They are gone. Right.
Which ones are leaving?
You're making it sound way more legit than it is.
My goodness!
I have the actual list. The actual
6 more teams are. Yeah, my bad. 6 more are leaving.
Yeah, it's New Mexico State, UTEP, Sam Houston, Louisiana Tech, Jacksonville State, Florida International, Middle Tennessee, Western Kentucky, and Liberty.
Jesus Christ! I have to write about those people next year.
Yeah, it's an amazing group.
So where did they go? Where did those teams go?
I think a lot of them are AAC.
Charlotte, FAU.
Yeah, because they
Texas.
lost Houston and Cincinnati, right?
Yeah. Rice, UAB, and UTSA are gone to the AAC.
5 teams just said we're out. We're going to the AAC. That's funny.
Love it. So, by the way, the number one rivalry in the MAC is the Battle of I-75, which is Bowling Green, Toledo.
That's awesome.
So Toledo just has like an eternal rocket pointed at their university. It's great. That's awesome. I hope that's real. Actually, like it's not. It could just be complete like a fable, like that they tell everybody on campus. Like, yeah, this is pointed at Bowling Green's 50-yard line. But
I mean, how would you do the math on? I mean,
you gotta light the rocket, but you got to know the rocket's speed and the angle at which it comes at. It's got to be pretty accurate, right? It's got to be at a certain. Angle.
Yeah, I mean, why not do it? If that's your rival, why not? Yeah. I
mean, now it makes me question. Okay, what's Bowling Green got to shoot back? You send like a horde of Falcons at him, or what? What are they doing?
They've been training Falcons for years.
Yeah,
just waiting for the right time.
Oh man. Well, I don't know how much do we want to talk about this week at all, or do we just want to leave it there?
We can leave it. I'm looking forward to in coming weeks. I want to. It's always fun to reflect on how much we got wrong, and also I'm starting to think about things like just through the lens of like process improvement. So I think that'll be a fun discussion as well. I already have one long tangent to go down to that extent. It didn't feel right to jam it into this show, but in an upcoming one.
Okay,
sure.
So I know you want to knock this out, but I want to ask a couple questions about this week.
Fine.
Do you give Ole Miss a chance against Alabama this week?
Yeah.
I think just because LSU did it, Tennessee's done it. This is
and they're at Ole Miss.
I like the conspiracy theory that Bryce re-hurt his shoulder against.
I've heard a lot of people say that. Like people I work with say that they're like, hey, he's not right. There's something wrong with him. Maybe they just aren't good. But we won't go there.
Yeah.
We're like one more loss away from Jahmyr Gibbs just being like, "Oh man, I hurt my toe. I need to sit out the rest of the year."
Did you see that today?
Get ready
I
for
saw
the
somebody
draft.
talk about Judkins, right? I guess they said Saban was like talking him up, and I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
he
he's
said
gone.
it was Nate, wasn't it? He said I think
It
that's
was Nate.
he found his Gibbs replacement for next
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
But like I do find it interesting that Alabama's lost close games, but it seems like every time they get into a game on the road, an actual road game that's actually against a decent team, they have trouble. Like Texas should have beat them. Like if Texas
Yeah.
if
We all
Texas had beat them, like we wouldn't even be talking about Alabama. But that game, I guess Ole Miss is actually a 12-point home underdog. Tennessee 21-point favorite. Okay, I know you said this Tulane isn't for real. You think they suck, Andrew. But you think they lose this week? You think they lose to UCF this week?
I'm concerned with UCF's ability to navigate the QB situation properly. Dude, did you hear Gus say that like JRP was cleared last week, and he was like, yeah, he didn't get enough practice reps, so he didn't get in. Dude, there's no way you can clear him after that hit, like 4 or 5 days ago or whatever. That's wild. I think I'm still all the way in on JRP, but I question how healthy he is, and I like Keenan. I think he's competent, but I don't know if. Yeah, I think Tulane would have a good shot at winning that game if Keen starts.
Well, they're a 1.5-point favorite.
Yeah.
Keen,
Speaking of clear, did you see what went on with and maybe it's just my own interpretation with Texas A&M and how Jimbo threaded the needle on his explanation of Connor Weigman talking about how the flu was going around the team and that Connor's not cleared, but thinking back to the previous game of how he slammed his head down on turf, got sacked, and then Jimbo pulled him away from the medical check guy, put him back in the game. Like, he was concussed, and just because the flu is going around the team, that the flu isn't the reason Connor didn't play. The reason Connor didn't play is he still doesn't know what day of the week it is. But that dude looks sick, man. He next year is the year for Texas A&M. Like, I'm gonna be all the way in on Weigman, Stewart, Muhammad. But
will they still be there?
I think that the
receivers. I think Weigman is definitely there.
You think they transfer out or go pro? I think that what the beliefs with respect to how this season has played out internally are probably vastly different than what people are saying externally, simply because I think that the expectations for them this season were based on recruiting over the last year and change, right? And the idea that you're that the recruiting ranks of the incoming class for Texas A&M is supposed to translate, top 5 recruiting doesn't necessarily translate to top 5 on the field, right? And the reason
not in 1 year,
exactly, the reason that we see with Alabama is they do it year after year after year after year after year. But I expect A&M to be able to retain their talent, hold firm with Jimbo, and I think next year's the year.
Okay, Chris, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say I think Mikey Keene is decent. I think he put on a good show for whoever decides they want to pay him to come transfer, like we talked about the week before about how
he's good. He's fine.
He's fine. He's comparable. I mean, he could definitely start at every single MAC school except for 1 or 2.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, there's one more game. Is this the game that TCU finally falls?
Now they're 7-point dogs. I think Sonny's got him right where he wants him. Right, there's no expectations. You can just kind of go.
You're running out of time for the collapse.
Yeah, I mean, which is fine. I hold no grudge at this point for lighting all my Chandler Morris money on fire and whatnot. So yeah, let's cash that Big 12 18-1 ticket. But there's no way Quentin Johnson plays this week, right? Like the term was high ankle sprain. No one comes back from that in 5 days. Like
he looked bad when he got hurt originally, and I think that's when the clock started. So he'll be at like what 2 weeks, 14 days, and that's still not enough. Like Cedric Tillman,
it wasn't. He didn't get hurt last week.
He was hurt 2 weeks ago. Could not really move laterally, but like straight line was fine. He played the rest of the game, and then I think he played 1 snap last week, and then he was like, it just didn't feel right, so I stopped. Which to me means
that would have been fun if you had the over on his player props, right?
I can only imagine how mad I would have been about that. So I think what ended up happening was he tried to play and felt like shit because the adrenaline wasn't there like it was the week before. And so, I don't think he plays, but because Tillman was out, I mean, he had the surgery, but even then, right? Like he still would need another week or two.
Yeah, I think it'll be a fun game. It'll be good.
All right. Well, now we're for real going to leave it there. Had a few hiccups in the stream tonight, but I thought we did good. Hopefully,
self-proclaimed pretty good podcast this week, guys.
But I don't know if we'll all three be back next week, but some form or fashion, 2 of us will be. Heck, Chris is like in these little solo videos. Maybe he just does the pod solo. We just do a mailbag. We do a mailbag and let Chris just answer questions. But anyway,
nobody
guys,
wants to hear that.
Appreciate you guys listening to us. Make sure you like and subscribe.